I know from my coaching work, I've dealt with a lot of people who live in that charged state and they don't know how to come down. So how do people self-identify when they may think it's normal? And then what are some simple strategies for them to step away from that, step out of that? Patricia Morgan is often referred to as a spunky senior. With a master's degree in clinical psychology, Patricia aims to lighten our load and brighten our outlook. Focused on strengthening resilience, Patricia has authored hundreds of articles, probably that many videos, and several books, including the award-winning Turn to Center: Simple Strategies to Navigate Distress, Depression, and Disconnection. And that's what we're going to be diving into today. Patricia has been described as a therapeutic counselor, author, mother of 3, grandmother of 5, and happily married most days. I also know Patricia through our Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, where she has always been such a giving person and is one of the lights of our association. Patricia, welcome to the SOULgineering Podcast.
Thank you, Robbie. It's lovely to be here. And I hear your voice is a little...
Yes, I apologize to you and our audience. I had a throat infection several days ago, really hurt my throat. And then I had to give a keynote yesterday morning, sounded like this. And I think 5 minutes after I finished, my voice was totally gone.
Well, we'll see what we can do about getting you to return to center.
Thank you. I will appreciate that so much. Now, there's so much I'd love to talk with you about, but I really want to dive into this amazing book, which is it's the Canadian Counseling Book of the Year award, right?
It has garnered the Counseling Book Award from the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association. Yeah.
I'm so happy for you for that. So to dive into this is, the subtitle is the simple strategies to navigate distress, depression, and disconnection. What I love about this book, Patricia, is you've made it so easy to understand. It's not all sorts of theoretical gobbledygook. Here's what it is. And then you give really practical exercises. This is not a book to read and put away. This is a handbook for her personal life. So to dive into this, a lot of people think that when there's stress, it's the fight-flight response, but it's not quite that simple, right? Can you explain what the autonomic nervous system is and how it works?
Right. So the polyvagal theory is based on the research of Dr. Stephen Porges, who has challenged our classic understanding of stress management. And basically, I, for years, was doing stress management workshops and saying that either we're stressed to the nines or we weren't stressed. And that's not necessarily true. So Porges has taught us that, yes, indeed, when we're not feeling safe, and that includes emotional safety. It doesn't have to be a bear chasing you or a car sideswiping you. It can be simply somebody turning their back on you, or perhaps you've got somebody who's even eye rolling at you where you get emotionally triggered. And there are two main responses that Porges started to describe. And it's based on the sympathetic nervous system, which gets activated, and we used to teach for years. Your sympathetic system is activated and you're into fight, fright, sometimes defend, freeze. And there was talk about going into the collapse state, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. And so the parasympathetic nervous system also gets activated. And the more we practice, and I'm not saying deliberately practice, it's often unconscious. We developed often these patterns in childhood that either to keep ourselves safe, we either get activated, defend, and it's high energy. High energy. Think about anger. Anger management problems are in this category of the sympathetic. I call it the charge state, just to make it simple. I was doing this with clients after taking the training around the polyvagal theory, and I was saying, "Oh, your sympathetic system is activated," and then that would have them go off thinking about what the heck is that? So I started using my own simple language and said, "Wow, looks like you're in that charged state." And their heads would nod. And it was feeling like out of control, like racing. Think about a car that's racing and out of control. You're going so fast that you might do harm to yourself, health, or others. So that is what I call the charge state. But then often people burn themselves out in the charge state, and it's like they're in a broken down car stuck in the ditch. And that's the depression, hopelessness. This is where suicide lives. This is where giving up lives. This is where feeling lost is, where lonely is. And in the medical term, it's called the dorsal vagal, and it is the parasympathetic system that we need sometimes to put the brake on that charge state. But we can get stuck in either one of these. So I call that collapsed giving up. When I have it, it feels like I've got toilet paper in my head, and if I move, it feels like I'm moving through molasses. I can hardly problem solve. I can hardly speak, and I call that the give up state. You've given up on yourself, and it's really dangerous if you give up yourself and the world. So what do we want? We want a third state, which is called the ventral vagal. And I won't get into a whole bunch of description of the vagus nerve, but that's all connected to a vagus nerve that gets activated and gets worn down, and we need to keep good vagal tone. And I call that the centered state. And the centered state is where you and I are connected. There's none of this charge, and there's none of this give up. We're at center with one another. We're grounded. We can problem solve. We can connect. And we feel totally embraced by ourselves and the other person. It's sometimes called co-regulation when I can stay centered and I bring you back from you having your Vesuvius, your anger charged state or your anxiety, and I say, I'm here. I'm here. Might come up a little bit and say, oh yeah, that's really, really difficult. I might bring myself up, not totally where you're at in your charged, excited, speeding state, just enough so that you kind of see me. And then I can see if I can bring you back. So we have two prefrontal cortexes that can make connection. So why isn't the word anxiety and anger and all those other words in the subtitle? Because we love alliteration. So it says distress, which I figure is anxiety, anger, well, just about the whole gamut of when you're not in center. And do we need to speed up sometimes? Absolutely. I got somebody chasing me with a knife. I want to be in that charged state and have all kinds of energy. You've probably heard, Robbie, of the mother, petite woman, who can lift a car because her child got underneath the car and was in danger. And in that moment, she is so charged with so much energy, she can pull off a miracle. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And we want a little bit of a flavor or drops of the charged state when we get on a roller coaster, when you and I start to play together, when you and I start to do the tango.
Absolutely. Salsa even is even more so.
Yeah, we don't want to just be, oh, I see you. I feel your heart. Yes, there's time and place for that. You know, I do that with our pussycat. Oh, sweetheart, just I'm so connected to you. It's so gentle. It's so soft. Sometimes we want some of that excitement, and there are times to let go. So
Yes.
I had a friend during COVID, and I started to get more and more depressed. The more I tried to make connection and no response and no response, the more I was being affected. So I finally said, I need to listen to this. We're
Yes.
not we're not denying anger. We're not denying anxiousness. We're not denying defending ourselves, and we're not denying giving up and feeling hopeless. What we're doing is we're making a decision anchored in the centered state. Is my
Right.
frontal cortex helping me? Have I got enough settled executive functioning problem solving brain available to make a wise decision based on the information from these other states?
Right. Because normally that higher functioning gets cut off with that amygdala hijack, right? When you get stressed, basically you turn the rest of your brain off.
Right. You're absolutely correct. And yeah, well, your your brain's still there, but the focus isn't necessarily there because focus and energy gets diverted to the muscular system, the activation system, and indeed, there's as you know as a rocket scientist, there's this when the amygdala gets fired. I don't know other way to activate it. There is a dump of chemicals. I mean, it truly is the cortisol and adrenaline is getting dumped, which affects us. So we want to honor that. The problem is when your main state of being becomes the charge state or the give up state,
Right.
and you think that's who you are, that's where you find that you believe is home for you in your who you are. And what I found that got me so excited about understanding this whole nervous system dynamics a little better was the shame in so many of my clients was just calmed. Oh, that's what's going on. And yes, in your childhood, you had to go and hide and make yourself invisible and give up because there was no possibility of anybody hugging you. No
Yes.
possibility. So you just give up that love is never available. Then you take that into your adulthood and it affects all your relationships,
Yes.
right? So now we're moving into how does the polyvagal theory work with trauma, because trauma has to do with those stressful events that happened and the way your nervous system, which was a main leader of your decision making as a child, decided to cope and survive.
Okay. So
So,
first of all, Patricia, I really want to thank you for simplifying the language because I think a lot of times when people go, whether it's to do self-development, which your book enables people to start working on their own, which is
yes,
wonderful, or to a therapist, I think the jargon, it just creates such a disparity between the client and the therapist that some people almost feel stupid because they don't get it. But you've simplified it so they can understand what's there. The So I congratulate you. It lets people really get going to what's there. What I would like to do is dive into these three areas: the charged and the centered and the give up. And let's start with the charged. How do you identify it, self-identify? And what are some simple strategies that you can use to break that? Because you had talked about, being able to step out of that.
right. Thank you for that. And I just want to add a little caveat to return to center and using the polyvagal theory. It's a perspective and it's psychoeducation for anybody living with trauma, and that is probably 95% of the population. Therapy is still needed. Trauma protocols are still needed to calm down because it's another layer of complexity to calm down patterns, particularly ones from childhood. So to answer,
Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that people can just use this book and go do everything, but it's a starting point. And then you need to find a therapist that you trust
Yeah,
that can support you through the deeper work.
absolutely. So when you're a pickle and you're in the pickle jar, you cannot see that you're pickled. So that's one of the main reasons I encourage people to go see a therapist, because the outside perspective in and of itself is very valuable.
I
And
love
now,
that.
yes, and now we are more skilled and more understanding how to deal with trauma. We do not have to re-traumatize people to get it to calm.
Absolutely. So now if we to jump into these states, let's take a look at the charge. How does someone realize I'm in that charge? And you know that the other thing is, I think with the workaholic culture we had in the 90s, the 2000s, so on, we have so many people who live there. I know from my coaching work, I've dealt with a lot of people who live in that charged state, and it's got to, and they don't know how to come down. So how do people self-identify when they may think it's normal? And then what are some simple strategies for them to step away from that, step out of that?
Okay. So the charge state is rewarded by our culture. Workaholism, getting things done, going at a fast pace. Technology also has supported us in charging ahead, because again, just think about the speed. So number one, listen to your loved ones, especially those loved ones that you trust, that really care about you. Somebody really cares for you and tilts their head and says, might you be working too many hours? Might you be going too fast? Might you not be making space for yourself? Allow them to be a mirror for you. The other is if you feel overwhelmed a lot and you're starting to feel anxious, heart rate going a lot. If you notice that your breathing is in your chest primarily, if I say to you, take a belly breath and you go, what? That's a very good indicator that you haven't spent much time in that centered, very calm state. So I think that covers that now, how to slow it down. So breathing is the classic. Noticing is another classic. Noticing your thoughts spinning. That's another indicator too. If you're going to bed and your thoughts are just spinning, spinning, spinning at a speed, do your thoughts. I mean, I talk fairly quickly. I can slow down when I work with clients and I'm helping them slow down. Remember, I said I would start if the client was charged like this, I would sort of reach, not, I don't want to join them in it, but kind of reach and then see if I can pull them down. And then if we do trauma work, I try to bring them way, way slowed down with my very hypnotic voice. So, there's all kinds of breathing techniques, but this is all you really need to know. The out breath needs to be longer than the out. The out breath needs to be longer than the in breath. Basically telling the amygdala, guess what? We have time. Guess what? We have time to go slow. There's no emergency here. It's saying we don't have to run.
Okay.
We can be present. So there's taking somebody's hand is another one.
Yeah.
Anything to slow you down. Some people have taught themselves to do tapping. One of the exercises in my book around slowing down the charge state is tapping if you want to get that elaborate. Sometimes as simple as sitting down. The more your body parts are grounded, the better. And I'm just going to going out in nature. Oh my goodness, nature goes at its natural, authentic self, and we can do that as well. And there's all kinds of little tricks you can do with your hands. There's the butterfly hug, which you can, like people, I'll tell people that do the butterfly hug and they're going like this. And so slow it down, right? Slow it down.
A butterfly doesn't whack you.
Right, the wacky. Yeah, take 20 seconds to love yourself. Take your right hand, put your fingers underneath your armpit, put your palm on your heart, and you find the heartbeat. Just even looking for the heartbeat will slow you down. And you can do this at a meeting. You know, people really won't notice. I have sections in the book for taking the charge state and calming it, what to do in public so you don't feel embarrassed, what to do in your everyday life, and then what to do if you're really, really stuck there, really stuck, what then to do.
That's great. And I love the techniques. You've got two separate breathing techniques and so on that are there. The thing is, a lot of these, some of them were with the traditional stress response. You've got to calm down, right? But thing I love about polyvagal theory, it introduces this other state, the give up state, where you actually have to bring the energy up. Can you share a bit about what that is? How you can address it once you're aware that you're there?
Right. So again, your loved ones you trust will give you feedback. Oh, you seem to be sleeping a lot. Your energy seems to be down. What's going on for you? Regrettably, in many families and in schools, etc., the quiet, reserved, eyes down person often gets missed. That's true in the workplace as well. So this is a state of great concern because, as I said, this is where suicide can turn up. Is it give up, hopeless. The world is hopeless. I'm hopeless. There's no point. And I actually had a mother bring her child to me once, and this kid was going to a psychologist and learning deep breathing, and he was depressed. He was just hopeless. He hated school. And all we did was we found some activities that he loved to do to add energy. So in this state, we are now adding energy. We're starting to put the foot on the gas pedal and seeing what energy we can have. Now, for some people, the simplest and the most effective strategy is to put down 3 names of people they trust and phone numbers. And if they can pick up the phone, I'll tell you, just picking up the phone can be difficult. And for anybody that doesn't have 3 names, please put down your distress center. People do not spend a half a year training to be volunteers on the helpline to go and sit their night shift from midnight till 8 a.m. and not have the phone ring. They want you to call. They want to support you. That's why they took all that training, to be there for you. And most of those volunteers reached out to a helpline themselves at some point in their life. Turning the television on, putting on some music. Be careful about the music. You don't want music that's going to take you deeper. And, I lost my ring and I lost my loved one the same day. We don't want to be listening
Not a
to that.
time for blues music and country music.
So unless it's my sweetheart put her buns in the oven, you know, that's right. So yeah, so the human voice, any kind of activity, if you can get yourself out the door, the worst place for somebody who's experiencing the give up state is spending all day in bed. And
Yes.
that's the inclination with the sheets up over the. Yes, isolation lives here as well, which is,
Yes.
we know, affects mental health. So the what we want to do is to have some kind of strategy that's ready for us. And again, holding somebody's hand. You can see the when we're in the charge state and the give up state, both of those states were disconnected from other people.
What about, there are people who are more introverted or shy. And
Yes,
so do they tend more, does the give up state have more of an impact on them? Because it is naturally harder for them to reach out. And then you add the emotional state to that.
right. So yes, the people with introverted preferences do tend to have less people in their circle. So it's imperative for them to at least identify those 3 people they feel comfortable calling, and it may be more difficult for them to identify whether they're in the give up state or whether they are fueling themselves by alone time. You see, an introvert gets energy by spending time alone and being thoughtful, perhaps being in nature, perhaps reading, or perhaps, the introverts tend to also like more meditative states, where a raving extrovert like me will use meditation more like when I'm cooking or when I'm dancing around, doing some kind of thoughtful piece that way.
Right.
So yeah, it's a little harder for them probably to identify. Yeah, we're both blowing our nose here.
Yes. So let's look at the centered state, which is where we want to spend more time. How do we enrich and build that and deepen it?
So I want you to think about, Robbie, all the places that you feel emotionally safe and supported, all the places. I see you putting beautiful photos of places in your community online, and you talk about how they nurture you and uplift you. Think about the people that you surround yourself with that maybe add some fun charge state or maybe support you when you're ready to give up on a project or a relationship or some other kind of loss in your in your life. Think about the activities that have you feeling focused, alive, and as I can never pronounce his name, in flow, Mahela, you know, that very long author that wrote the book called Flow. Think about those activities. What about animals? Interestingly enough, for many people, a dog is a trigger of danger, while for many other people, a dog is a trigger of comfort and safety. My best friend. So we want to have a repertoire of comforting people, places, activities, smells. What's on your playlist, as our friend Jennifer Buchanan talks about? What is your playlist to support the emotional mood that you want to
Right.
up yourself to, right? So you might have pieces of music that make fun of the charge state and release some energy, when you're dancing to it. And that same song may uplift you out of the give up state.
Right.
Right. And Porges refers to this as vagal tone. And all these activities will help you experience more moments in the centered state so you more quickly know and can identify when you flipped out of it.
Right. So the more time you spend, the easier it is to know when you're out.
Right, because we talked before about you can end up thinking that's who you are. I have clients that come to me and their family and they identify themselves as an angry person.
Right.
There is no such thing as an angry person. There is a person who is constantly in the charged state, not feeling safe in this world. That allows us to see ourselves and others with increased compassion.
So here's a thought that for someone who's lived in that charge state or the give up state even a lot, would I be right in saying that the centered state may even feel strange or unnatural?
Yes, people say that. I feel uncomfortable if I'm not like working all the time. I start to worry. I go there for a couple minutes and then I worry about catastrophizing or whatever, and they're right back into the charged or anxious state.
Okay.
Yeah, it becomes so familiar.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always say it's not a comfort zone. It's a familiar zone. And I've had coaching clients fight irrationally to stay in toxic situations because it's what they know.
Yes, that's right. It becomes their normal.
Yes. So,
Although I say normal is on your dryer between hot and cold because there really isn't a
right.
normal, but it's become their normal. Don't look for somebody else. Don't ask for the world normal because there
No
isn't one.
such thing.
Yeah, we need to find what we want as normal for us. What's
Right.
normal for me and isn't working for me? Is it working for me for my mental health, my physical health, my spirituality? Is it working for me in my relationships? This state of being that I spend a majority of my time in.
Right. And it's a key thing you just said. It's not what has been my normal. It's what do I want my normal to be?
Mm-hmm.
Big
Mm-hmm.
difference.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm just aware of time, Patricia. There's one other question I'd like to draw on. I find there's a fascinating piece you've got on inner child. And I know if you really want to do inner child work, you need to get professional support. But
Yes.
you give some initial ideas, strategies people can explore. Can you explain the difference between the natural child and the wounded child, and how that can lead to things in our head, that's judgments in our head, and that transition as the wound happens, those judgments that we make about ourselves.
Right. So the natural child is being at center as a child. And then as children, because we're dependent on our survival, our food, shelter, clothing, and all decision making is in the hands of adults, and many of them are wounded. You've heard the line that hurt people hurt people. Well, when you've got parents that are incredibly wounded, they're going to pass on their hurt regardless of how they swear. I'll never pass this on to my child unless they deal with it and put themselves at choice. This happens often with sexual abuse, for example. A mother who is sexually abused and never talked about it, never dealt with it, she will either push her daughter as a teenager into it by calling them awful names like slut, etc., or won't ever talk about it, one end or the other, in an effort to protect while they have not come to grips with that whole wounding in themselves. So we end up with the child having to adapt to protect the wounds that they get, and it can be verbal, emotional, physical, sexual, either invasion or abandonment. Now, as adults, we can't truly be abandoned unless we've got some significant disability, physical or mental. Many people say, "Oh, my partner abandoned them." No, you've still got choice. Abandoned means you're left to die. You're left
Right.
to your own devices, right?
Right. But it
So
feels that way emotionally to them.
it does feel the same, and that's another indicator of trauma that hasn't been dealt with, because realistically, you as an adult have all kinds of choices, all kinds of options, and you can pick up on them by people saying, "I have to, I should, I must, I can't, I'm not able to." And I say, "Really? Tell me more about that," right?
Right. I've always said shoulds are usually someone else's voice in your head.
That's right. That's right. The should is somebody else's agenda. People say should because they're not comfortable with your behavior. When I say you should make this podcast longer, I'm looking to have my needs met. And if your needs are if my needs override yours, then you're going to end up suffering. And again, we're back to caregivers who have unconscious needs that they put on kids.
Yes.
You know? And it goes all the way from you should be quiet and not be heard to you should be a sexual object to you should go and get a political degree when actually your heart is an artist.
Or just tearing them apart because of whatever's inside of them.
Oh, here's a classic. The father who wanted to be a hockey star that puts his two sons into hockey, and these little boys are interested in ballet.
I've seen so much of that. So Patricia, I wish that we could go on. I could talk with you forever, and I look forward to our ongoing conversations, but I really recommend to anyone picking up this book. It is amazing, so clear, and really some really simple strategies that I think all of us can take advantage of. There's some absolutely that I can use myself. Also, it is available, of course, on Amazon. And the other thing I want to point out is Patricia's website, both for a wealth of resources, but also you can reach out to her if you're interested in counseling, is solutionsforresilience.com. And again, I know of several people who have gone to Patricia and just speak the world of you. You are an amazing professional, Patricia.
Thank you.
And I really, truly want to thank you for joining me for this. This is, when I talk about SOULgineering your life, it's about finding the processes, the systems that allow you to bring more of your heart and soul into everything you do, into your work, into all of your life. And to me, what you've presented here are really fundamental building blocks for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining.
I got the energy.